My name's Archie, but how many of you know who Dersu Uzala is? Anyone? Good. Do you know who Dersu Uzala is? That's the title of this. No? Well, let me tell you, I'm going to sit down if I may. Too much tennis. There we go. Dersu Uzala was born about the 1890s in Mongolia, and he was a trapper, a very small man, couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't count very well, but he was this amazing trapper of animals for food in Mongolia. And he met up with a Russian surveyor, a military man. He met up with this military man in 1909 or something like that, who was a lieutenant in the Russian army in peacetime, and who was a surveyor, surveying the whole of Russia for the march. And he was amazed by the particular talents of this little elderly man as a trapper. And they went up to Siberia to do some checking out of topography. And there's a very strange event there where at sunset, because this area of Siberia is a big flat plain, no trees, nothing grows. And at sunset, in what they call the summer, as the sun goes down, it sets up a horrific wind towards us at the west and blowing what snow, and there's heaps of snow there. And you have to survive by hiding behind a rock. And the trapper saved the fellow's life. Anyway, in 1920s, a Russian novelist wrote a book called Dersu Uzala about the meeting of these two people. In the 1970s, Kurosawa, does that mean anything to you?
Yes. Yes.
A Japanese filmmaker made a film, a wonderful film, called Dersu Uzala. And I saw the film. I was in Papua New Guinea for a number of years, on the campus at the university, at open air, one hot, like 2 or 3 nights ago here, steaming hot, 100 odd degrees, and everyone watching the film was frozen. It was such a powerful, freezing. You know the film? No? Yeah. It amazed me anyway. That was 1981. And I was fascinated by the film. Didn't think about it until 10 years later, when I was up in Panderton. You know where Panderton is? Panderton, Frobisher Bay, is a small Inuit village up on the edge of the Arctic Circle. And the Inuits have a tapestry workshop. And Susan and I were up there teaching in 91 and 93 or 4 or something. And she was printing a drawing of an Inuit. And the machine actually moved. It was an old photocopy, and as it was going through, it hit and upset the image, right? But it looked just like Dersu. And it absolutely fascinated that coincidence 10 years later. So, up there, I worked on a whole series of 10-inch square sketch tapestries. 10 inches, that's what, 18 centimeters by 18 centimeters, I think. And I wasn't aware at the time, until I saw this image, I was actually starting a series. Anyway, we were living in Hawaii at the time, and I kept going on with, I think, about a dozen small sketches based on this, of the snow, the wind, the ice. And by good fortune, the Art Academy on Hawaii purchased a whole lot of them. So I said, no, I was really moving towards a series. And that's what started this series, right? So that's Moscow, Japan, Hamilton, and Canada. And I wove these mostly in Hawaii over 1993 to 1997, just every so often. And if you know anything about the history of tapestry, which shocks me looking back, women weren't allowed to weave tapestry in medieval Europe, only men. But I was weaving them anyway. And I started the set, and I just wove them. The European tapestry in medieval times would have filled that wall, one tapestry, right? And I had trained as a tapestry weaver as an apprentice. I started in 1948 for 7 years as an apprentice. Then I went to art college and graduated and did all that. And here I was a tapestry weaver, weaving my own tapestries. But I wanted to find a form for weaving an echo of Dersu Uzala, compared to the Russian novelist, compared to the London translator, compared to Kurosawa. And each one of these things have a different response to the strange little man, and told the narrative or retold the narrative in a different way, because it was, as I say, 1900 when they were working together. And there was no photographs, no writing then, so there are different versions. I think I started on the second one. I didn't weave in any order of the narrative. I started working my way through, deciding, I had no idea how many were going to be, which one. The only one that was in order was the last one. I wove that one 12. The rest happened randomly. And responding to the narrative, the sketches, and time and time, and on. How many people actually do some tapestry weaving here? Quite a few. Well, some odd things happen. Excuse me. I love tapestry, as does Susan, as a hanging cloth. We think of weaving as a creative journey. We do not anymore design our tapestries and then weave them. We put up the work, we have a rough idea of the height, we don't know we know the width, but not the height. And we love weaving from bottom to top. Because if you weave sideways, you can work very, very photographically. If you weave from the bottom upwards, all these steps that you see, a line does this. It's the language. If you think of music, if you think of a piano, a violin, a guitar, musician instruments don't conceal themselves. The piano doesn't try to play like a violin. And tapestry weaving has its own potential language, its medium. And that's what both Susan and I have been obsessed with. For me now, 65 years past in May that I started weaving, right? So currently I'm working on tapestry 496. Some of them are big, none of them 40 feet, well, one 40 feet wide one, but they can be any size. But you read through these, weaving them from bottom to top, developing the design as it grows, responding to the weaving. Like a jazz musician, Miles Davis would respond to the phrase, the group would respond to the phrase, the piano, the guitar, whatever. As opposed to classical music, like classical tapestry, is pre-planned. I'm not saying that's wrong, but if you're a composer as well as a player, giving yourself an open journey is what enthralls us. It's worth thinking about anyway, if we do that. If you have any questions to ask about any one of these, for instance, the cracked ice is great when you look near to it because the steps are perfect for cracking the ice. Whereas on this portrait, which happens to be based on a drawing of my son when he was this high in Hawaii, to avoid the step, the side of his tunic is stepped, but his head is tilted, just very slightly, but there's no step there. That's because I pulled it, took out warps at one side and added in warps at the other to make it because we see it as a living, developing language, and that runs through in many, many parts. The ravens, when we were up in Palmerton, we were there in the early spring, late winter, first time, and the number of ravens and the snow was such a characteristic of that place. Anyone got any questions to ask? Could ask a whole house, something.
I have one. I'm very curious, Archie, about the last piece that you did, because of the grayscale, the color, the tonal changes that are in the other pieces. The first two have red, and then the last one has red and green. Was that a conscious choice that you made?
Well, I'll let you into a secret. I'm colorblind. I'm red-green colorblind. And I don't use a great deal of color. I work a great deal, but don't tell anyone, right? I'm not a colorist, is the best thing to say. And even when I run a workshop with half a dozen other tapestry weavers, my role was to establish the tonality of the yarn, and their role was to establish the chroma or the color, and we fought each other until we got an agreement and you found the color. But that's why
but it does show up in the last piece, where life is being regenerated.
Yes, yeah, or from Dersu in 1898 right through, the cycle goes on for him, although he died in 1929 or something. And I like this for all of us. We're here, we live our life, we do what we do, and pass on, and somebody else takes sense of that.